Hello again, Chanel here from Elastic Path, and welcome to the second episode of our Composable Commerce mini-series, where we face the reality that digital isn't just a channel and needs to be a key part of your commerce strategy. Now, as many of you may know, Elastic Path offers Composable Commerce as a service, an API-first, headless microservices solution, which helps brands to infuse digital throughout their entire commerce strategy. But if you don't know what Composable Commerce is, I definitely recommend checking out episode 1 first, where I walk through an overview of this new approach. Now, as you learn more about Composable Commerce and how to leverage it to your advantage, the next thought is usually, well, that seems like it's going to be too expensive. But in reality, adopting a composable approach will actually reduce your overall total costs. And that's why in this episode, I'll be helping you understand how your total cost differs when you choose a composable solution versus a traditional monolithic platform. And we know that each business is going to be different. Each business's commerce strategy is unique. We'll have a range of complex customizations and we'll have different revenue margins. And so cost is going to vary use case to use case. And therefore, an exact breakdown of the dollar value will not be the best representation of what to expect. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to the 5 key costs that will affect your total cost of your solution. That's going to be your core commerce software costs, your third-party software costs, the cost of your front-end hosting, the cost to implement your solution, and the cost to make changes. So in this episode, not only will I go through how these costs differ for each solution type, I'll also give you some insights of what to consider for these costs for your future roadmap. So stay tuned. All right, so core commerce software costs. Now, this is otherwise known as your licensing fee and is the most upfront cost that you'll be introduced to by your vendor. This is typically calculated using gross merchandise volume or can be calculated using number of orders, which is typically used for more B2B companies. And this can be easily found if you just request a quote. Now, some vendors price their solution based on the tier in which your company falls in, while others price it based on taking a percentage of your total sales at the end of the year. Now, some things to look out for, though, are additional yearly fees that are usually associated with vendors that charge a percentage. Or if you're in the tier bracket, you should be looking out for automatic bumping to the next tier if there are any overages. Now, as we can see here, when we're comparing monolithic platforms and composable solutions, monolithic platforms like SAP Hybris or Salesforce Commerce Cloud is going to be more expensive when we're looking at core commerce software costs. Now, third-party software costs can be a little bit more tricky depending on the route that you choose to extend your platform. Now, the plugin route allows you to choose from a variety of applications within your platform's marketplace. And these applications are pre-built based on how your vendor believes that the application should function. Now, this can seem pretty attractive, but in reality, if your business requirements don't align with how the application currently works, you'll end up having to change it and customize it to your needs. And making changes with monolithic platforms get very tricky. It's time consuming and gets costly very quickly. On the other hand, composable solutions like Elastic Path will allow you to choose the vendor to support your service and customize the integration to your specific needs. Now, as you can see, this is going to be a little bit more expensive than monolithic platforms, but it's important to remember that these customizations will be fast, built to your specific needs, and will be easy to alter in the future. Now, the next cost is front-end hosting, and front-end hosting is a typical cost that is often left out when calculating total costs. And this is actually important because the vendor you choose will end up determining how best your website performs. Now, some vendors include front-end hosting in their licensing fee cost, while others allow you to choose a vendor that best suits your needs. Composable solutions like Elastic Path, you'll have to choose your service provider, but we'll definitely provide you some guidance. Now, as you can see here, total software costs, that's your core commerce software, your third-party software, and your hosting. Monolithic platforms will be a little bit higher. Now, the last cost for year one is going to be implementation cost. And this is going to be dependent on the cost of your developer and how long it takes to build both the front end and the back end of your system. As you may know by now, composable solutions require a technically savvy team to piece everything together from scratch, while monolithic platforms have a lot more pre-built services, and their cost will be mostly due to alterations or customizations. So as you can see here, it's going to be less costly for monolithic platforms. Now, taking a step back and looking at total year one costs, we can see they are very similar. Neither seems to be necessarily better than the other, but what Elastic Path offers is endless speed and flexibility to continuously optimize your e-commerce strategy. And we're going to see how important this is as we look at year-over-year costs after year one. For year two, to keep things simple, let's take a scenario where revenue remains flat year over year. So core commerce software costs, your third-party software costs, and your front-end hosting will remain the same. And we can also eliminate implementation costs because that's finished in year one. So the only cost that you need to be considering now is the cost of changes. And the cost of changes will include maintenance of your system, upgrades to your software, maintenance and upgrades to your third-party software, changes in the back-end functionality to fit your business requirements, and new user experiences to keep up with customer expectations. A top digital strategy is iterative and focused on continuously optimizing customer experiences. But the reality is change does not come cheap or easily with monolithic platforms. Due to their rigid structure, the changes that we can expect for year two and year three are going to be very difficult, and it's going to drive up costs that is going to be executed by your developer. For example, because monolithic architectures are so tightly coupled, there are many interdependencies that your developers will have to painstakingly take into account every time there's a change. And this will ensure that your system runs smoothly and nothing breaks. So they'll have to do full system regressions and quality assurances and restart the application every time there's a change. And this not only increases your developer time, but also slows your time to market. Or let's even take code, for example. We've seen how businesses have needed to adapt and have not been able to do so quickly. Adding a new user experience like curbside pickup or a D2C digital channel to a monolithic platform could take weeks, even months. On the other hand, composable solutions like Elastic Path maintains your entire system for you and handles all of your upgrades and your updates. And unlike monolithic platforms, its modular architecture allows you to try new things quickly. That means no downtime. And you can design and deploy very quickly. Now, this not only reduces your developer time, but also reduces the risk of putting in months and investment into something only to realize that it doesn't work. At Elastic Path, we've seen customers deploy user experiences like curbside pickup and self-checkout in as little as 4 days. So this is going to be really good for continuously iterating and optimizing your strategy. Now, when you take a step back, assessing your total cost, you can see, is not a straight line method. On one hand, traditional monolithic platforms may seem much more attractive because they have a lower year one cost. But when you look at cost of changes year over year, it begins to add up and you end up paying a lot more. On the other hand, it may seem a little bit daunting to build your commerce strategy from scratch with a composable commerce approach. But the benefits outweigh the costs and you end up paying a lot less in the long run. We'd love to help you to understand how we can reduce your total cost with our composable commerce approach. Please reach out and we'd love to hear from you and get started ASAP. Thanks for tuning in.